Hey, Jimmy, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. It's great to be here. I'm a big fan. So a little bit of background. I'm 50 years wise, so just hit the big 50.
Wow.
I live in Park City, Utah, with my lovely wife Kelly, who's been in sales her whole career, and we have a little 18-month-old furry friend named Roman, so a little 15-pound miniature Aussie Doodle, and keeps us on our toes. I grew up in Iowa. Have you heard of Iowa before, Brian?
Have. Well, is that in the United States or is that?
It's not the potato state. It's that they have great sweet corn.
Yeah.
But yeah, learned a lot about hard work and values. Family of five, three older brothers. We're always getting called to go out and do things that most people have probably never heard of, like detasseling corn, walking beans, baling hay, and very proud to grow up there and learned a lot about hard work and principles and values and um, those sort of things. And then from a sales career standpoint, so I started my career with Pitney Bowes. And spent about 10 years with them and got some great foundational sales training and leadership principles there and learnings, and ever thankful for that, and still look back and tell stories about the things that we used to do there and stuff. And then just went to work in leadership with Apple, and spent a few years there. And then I transitioned out of leadership. My wife is younger than me, and she was on this path with her career to move up into leadership. So I decided, well, I need to get into something where I can live anywhere and kind of do anything. So I got into this world of enterprise SaaS and um, worked for a great company called Cornerstone. And now I'm at an organization called MentorClick.
And what was it like going from big companies, Pitney Bowes, huge, Apple, enormous? Um,
Yeah, that was interesting. One somebody taught me a long time ago to come up with what your personal work values are, Jimmy. And it took me some years to do this. And number I won't go into all of those right now because that's like a thesis. But number five is agility, and so that really helped me going from a company that had everything and all the processes in place to a smaller company that you're like, how do we make coffee?
where are the cups?
Right. Exactly. Oh, we don't have cups. Go get them.
Yeah. Because,
So yeah. But
but in
I'm at a
sales,
great.
that's so much different when you go to a startup because, you call people, everyone's heard of Apple.
Yeah. Yeah.
Most people have heard of Pitney Bowes, but it's a very different sale when you have to like start with, the whole category.
Yeah, it's interesting. And every one of those companies that I work for has been the leader, and now MentorClick. And so that's one thing I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I've kind of figured out, well, like find the best company that's the best at what they do and work for them. And the thing with if I can just tell you a little bit about the company I work for now, is that okay?
Sure.
Yeah. So it's MentorClick. It's an employee mentoring software platform. And I was reading a report the other day that said it's like 92% of Fortune 500 companies are doing mentoring. 100% of Fortune 50 companies are doing mentoring. I would argue within those companies, 90% of the people don't even know mentoring exists. Certainly, you have women being underrepresented when it comes to mentoring diverse groups like Black talent, and that's why we exist. We just take that and make mentoring sustainable, scalable, and provide meaningful outcomes. And it's been a pleasure. I gravitate towards that. I've had some great mentors in my career, and yeah.
Well, I mean, that sounds like a great idea, but I bet it's not easy to sell. Because where do you start?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a matter of trying to doing your research, trying to identify the types of organizations that are, like, for example, like Diversity Inc. top 50 type companies.
Okay.
And a lot of times it's a technology that doesn't exist within organizations, which is unique versus other things. So it's a lot of, this is very interesting. We don't have a budget, do nothing, no decisions. But if you do the right thing and stay in touch, follow up, usually good things happen.
And who owns that problem? Is it HR
Hmm.
or is it line
It
of
can be.
business?
Yeah. Yeah. Generally speaking, it's, HR, your, talent development, DE&I now is being really formed with all the things that have happened in the last few years, and kind of can fall under that umbrella. But a lot of times we're doing mentoring that is more like coaching, so more skill development. So that might fall under a specific business unit like sales
Yeah.
or IT or finance or whatever, that's trying to, align not so much mentoring, but coaches with specific new employees or high potentials.
And I talk to and I work with a lot of reps who do sell to HR, and they're super nice people, but their budgets and their change agents, not so much.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, you got that right. It's not the easiest thing. I say simple, but not easy.
Right. And I
Yeah.
got your main objection or obstacle is nice to have versus must to have.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I would say it's a must-have. We've seen
Go
tremendous.
figure.
I have to say that, right? And we're on record, but we have tremendous data points around ROI and reduction in turnover and promotions and things like that. But yeah, I don't think we're like the world of, you need a copy, get a Xerox.
Right.
You need a phone, get a mobile device, get an iPhone, that type of thing. I don't think it's there yet, but hopefully
So
we'll get there.
how do you get your reps and yourself when you're involved in the deal? Because probably getting the demo is pretty easy. Not easy, but possible. And
Yeah,
maybe an eval, but when it goes up to get funded
yeah,
and
that's the, I think the secret sauce is getting people just to see something that they've never seen. If I tell my team, if it's like, if you had never heard of a car, or you never driven a car and you've heard of a car, and I tried to verbally explain it to you. It's like, get them to see it.
yeah.
And we've had some unbelievable experiences that people were like, I'm not really ready, that type of thing, or um, don't have a budget. Well, I know you don't have a budget because it doesn't really exist within organizations as far as a tech, so to speak. So
And how have you kind of mentored your team to become good at selling into that environment? Because most people, they're very comfortable in the beauty contest type sale. We're looking at three vendors in this category. There's some curiosity, interest, and urgency around it. But I think when there's emerging technologies, of course, the ROI is there, but somebody has to get it.
yeah, yeah, it's there's a certain rhythm to it for sure. And I'm a big believer that slow and steady wins the race. You have to, you have to really manage your time and these leads or companies that you talk to that now see it, but maybe they're still not ready. You got to have timely follow up, and I think that's what people want. Patiently persistent, because mentoring or coaching is going to come up at some point,
Yeah.
for sure. And when that does, somebody says, I saw that purple company and it was really cool.
They
We need
did
to go get
something
back
with
together.
this.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, this person is still staying in touch with me, and I like how they do it, and they share insight, information, and invite us to events and things like that.
Now, how did you or how do you maintain that mindset? The patient, persistent, is that part of the farming background or because that's
Yeah, I would say, I mean, for me, it just comes back to like, hard work. And yeah, it's that farming thing. It's like, this is very much a plant the seed type of industry, and farmers can't just plant seeds.
In
Like my
September.
grandpa every morning was probably out looking at his field, checking things out, and you just have to get into that rhythm of doing that. And that's the key piece. And some people don't want to do that. They want
Right.
the
Yeah.
instant gratification, and what they say, good things come to those who wait, or what have you.
Well, and this is kind of the key differentiator, or one of them, between the simple sale and the complex sale,
Yeah.
is that, waiting for the gratification.
Right. Right.
And
You got to celebrate the little wins. That's the big thing in this
right.
world, and enterprise software world. You got to celebrate the little wins.
And how do you keep the team focused on that and not try and, push for the close on that first call, or at the end of the month or quarter, when everyone knows it's not ready, but they're like, why not try?
Yeah, that's the $62 million question. Um, I think a lot of it is lead by example. Don't ask people to do things that you wouldn't do yourself. And um, you got to be cohesive and work together as teams to come up with ideas and keep people, I guess, lack of better words, maybe like keep people together and thinking the same thing and working together. And, uh, follow up is king. And it's just, it certainly helps when people start to see successes when that happens, and then you've got to celebrate those, and versus beating them up on the not doing it, celebrate the wins.
Yeah. And how do you interview for that type of personality? Because a lot of salespeople, they've been conditioned, trained, rewarded on the stimulus response.
Yeah. I guess, you want to, in my mind, you want to be really, really thoughtful about the type of person that, like, I've done this job myself. And I understand what that really means. And you want to be really thoughtful about the type of, first of all, how you present what you're looking for, and then be very thoughtful about the types of questions. So I would say you want somebody with that farming mindset, that the same type of mindset that it takes to run our rhythm, versus how they did it now, and really understanding that. And of course, if they've been successful running this type of rhythm, which there are orgs out there that are like that kind of fit into that, little bit different category of nice to have. And if they've ran rhythms that align with that, that's the key piece starting there.
And what types of questions have you found, like either an indirect question? Because I'm working with a leader right now on this.
Ah, that one, a lot of it is, to me, like situational based stuff. Tell me about a time. Uh, what are the biggest challenges you find? Things like that. I probably have to put some more thought into that. I know I have like a list of interview questions probably pulled up, but I don't know. What are your thoughts around that?
The one I came up with was, during the interview process, bring up, hey, a company's, offering this 401k, and I'm not sure what to do with it. What are your thoughts about 401ks? Is it in retirement? How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
Because the people who have the long view are going to be like, oh yeah, you save a little now, and in 30 years you're a gazillionaire. And the other
Yeah.
person is like, no, man, don't worry about it. Just put
Yeah.
it into real estate and let's go skiing.
Yeah.
Right? There's the, immediate gratification and then the delayed gratification.
Yeah. Right. For sure.
And,
That's a good one.
as humans, we're really bad at delayed gratification.
Especially nowadays.
Well,
People want
yeah,
everything instantly, you know?
absolutely. Immediately.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's not how this works.
Nope, nope. That's why I say slow and steady wins the race.
You know? And what's the hardest part of your job?
I would say the the hardest part is probably well, I think people think as a VP that everything's always like rainbows and unicorns. And um that we don't like, maybe, as I would like to think that most VPs care about people. I know people that know me know I immensely care about people, sometimes like probably to a fault. But I think it's that balance of driving the business and then making sure that you're putting culture and people in front of that, and making sure that that's understood with your team.
And do you get resistance? Maybe it's not the right time to ask, but either through the board or leadership, because it is a business and everyone's got their own expectations of what it takes.
Yeah.
I've never really, I've had great leaders that understood this, but at the end of the quarter, things kind of shift a little, board meetings happen, and all of a sudden,
Yeah, it's a good question. I need to think about that a second. Uh I would say that there's a tendency to like push panic buttons, and I feel like, especially at like end of quarter or end of year, things like that. But uh this is one of those balancing acts where you're in the middle of like upper leadership or the board or whatever, and you've got to filter those things out. And I don't know, I see some people like will push panic buttons and start throwing a ton of things at people when you're trying to like run a system. And I talk a lot about, don't look at, I'm a big sports fan, and Nick Saban, I'm not an Alabama fan, but Nick Saban talks about focus on the play, focus on the 6 seconds of the play, do the 6 seconds, don't look at the scoreboard. Well, at the end of the quarter, we start looking at the scoreboard, and then we start running a ton of different plays. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to sticking to the fundamentals, and the blocking and tackling has to continue.
yeah, because what keeps coming up when you use either farming analogies is the hunter farmer mentality.
Right.
And people, and I think people misinterpret the farmer, that they're just managing accounts, as opposed to there's a circadian rhythm of the day, there's seasons of the year, there,
Mm.
that if you understand the process and you work consistently every day, that it naturally works out.
Yeah, that's so.
But the farmer just says, well, just go shoot a deer.
Yeah, right. Right.
Well, then you need to find a deer, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Within range, and
Yeah.
have good aim, and then find a way of getting the deer back. And and I think enterprise sales, although you need the farming mentality to understand the process and not look at it as account management or servicing the account.
Yeah, and there's a balance in there of like, you know, hunting and farming, and you could argue there could be one and the same. Then there's gatherers, there's types of jobs that are gathering. And that tends to be more like retail sales, like um but yeah, there's got to be a consistent way. The farmer can't say, well, let me go out to the field, one
every
day
other day.
this week and then 14 days later. And then I'll do it. I think, oh, the crops look like they're getting a little, they haven't been tended to. So you've got to have that system and that rhythm and continue to do that. And I find that like most salespeople in farming type environments will like, they'll go to the field. I'll use that analogy. We'll stick with it a couple times and then they're not reaping the reward. So then they'll stop.
Yes.
And it's those that go back and go back and I don't know, I call them the top 10 percenters. Those people that do that usually will win.
And what skills other than that would you build into a rep? Let's say you had CRISPR or you had the ability to build a rep.
Yeah, well, I look at it like I learned this from my training days, and quite frankly, from just probably going back to Pitney Bowes. I look at it like there's 5 key areas of pillars, call them, what you want with in sales to be successful. You need to know your certainly your industry. Okay. You need to know your product. You need to know your competition. You need to know the tools that will help you be more effective at your job, better at your craft. And the last one is sales process, and you could argue like methodology, right? And it's interesting, Brian, because my 5th year at Pitney Bowes, I was fortunate enough to do really well and went from an individual contributor to a leader on an advisory council. And then I got an opportunity to go into training. And so we moved to California, like the Beverly Hillbillies, packed up our pickup truck and dog, and away we went from this little town in Iowa of 800 people to Los Angeles.
Wow.
And here we go. And so I was in charge of training for 7 states all along the West Coast, Alaska and Hawaii. And first thing I asked is I said, hey, I want to go to the regions and meet the top performers. And some of them I've known from advisory or clubs and stuff. And like most of them did like those those 5 things really well. Industry, product, competition, tools, sales process. But what I found out with the top performers is they went deeper into sales methodology. So they were talking about 5 minutes with Vito, selling to Vito, spin selling, stop telling and start selling, all of these old classic methodologies. And so I look at all 5 of those things, and I think a lot of leaders spend most of their time on the 5th one, sales process, prospecting, closing, and they leave the training part behind. So I'm really looking at those 5 areas, and people that are constantly wanting to get better in all of those areas, and they're going to go get that. They're the best.
Yeah. Because, and that's been consistent with the people I interview with, is that if somebody doesn't have a system, a process, whatever they call it, methodology, and then there's the rest that kind of a reactive, wing it, Hail Mary it, or, call Mr. Big Cheese or Mrs. Big Cheese at the end of the quarter, pound. Kind of the simple sales stuff applied to the complex sale, I always found was a disaster. But the people who kind of understand the game they're playing.
Yeah. It's certainly important to stay on top of things and understand things. And a lot of people are big on the relationship, which I think is important, but at the end of the day, people want to buy from people that will help them make that process easier and efficient, and will follow up and do things with integrity and things like that. I don't know if they care that I grew up in Iowa and I don't know,
it's entertaining,
the Iowa Hawkeyes or something, it's like people get hung up, there's a lot of like, oh, they really like me. They really like me. It's like, I mean, I got a great relationship. Like, really? Like, I mean, I've been married to my wife for 20 years and we've had a few fights and we have a great relationship. I don't know if you're three or
Well,
four conversations,
yeah, I
you
mean,
know.
if the relationship's about the interaction between the two people, that's good. That's rapport. But is the
Hmm.
relationship around solving the problem that they have that you have the solution for?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the relationship you really want.
Exactly. Helping them solve business needs and helping them arrive at like how they can actually acquire this solution, especially in this world of, must, are, nice to have,
Yeah.
right?
And I'm guessing that this sale is also a lot more complex than your previous sales. More people involved, maybe more money, more change on the client side.
Yeah, I mean, especially like post-COVID. Post-COVID has definitely changed the number of people that it takes to make a decision, because people, I mean, this is my opinion, but I think people can get involved in making decisions because they're not all like driving into the corporate office. They're working virtually. So like, hey, why don't you join this? And pretty soon you have, um, and I also think people are more cautious with making decisions with software. There's more around data privacy and security and things like that. So yeah, it's almost like there are sales within the sale,
Yeah, definitely.
all the way along.
And what skill do you wish you had more of, or you feel would take your game to the next level?
Hmm. As a leader or as a individual contributor?
Either, whichever one you think.
Yeah. Boy, there's a ton of them, but I mean, I'm a that's a good one.
Because you've got an interesting background, and I like the going into the training side because that's the probably the best preparation to become a leader,
Yeah, yeah,
because you get to work with other reps and you get to understand how those rascals think, and you learn how crazy different
yeah,
everybody
yeah, yeah.
is.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think like my personality type is kind of unique from a sales leader. If you've taken DISC, I'm not the D dominant. I'm the IS person, and it's interesting. Best salesperson I ever met in my life, a gentleman named Ed Deba from San Francisco, no longer with us, but this resonated with me because he's, you talk about skill, like a sales skill, and what I wish I had better is closing. And people that when Ed said this, he told me this too, like that's his biggest opportunity. I'm like, you're the best salesperson I've ever seen. You go to I mean, they built clubs for you at Pitney Bowes, and he learned like that was his biggest weakness, but he learned how to overcome that and different tips and tactics to and I'm kind of that same way. I tell people this, that's my biggest opportunity. They're like, no way. I'm like, yeah, you got to be willing to like look at at different things in the processes and be real with yourself
Yeah,
and be coachable and understand that and find ways to overcome that.
yeah. And when you're what do you see as the key difference between like the B players and the A players in your not necessarily your current company, but either in a past company or just in general?
Yeah, I would say um well, so I have a saying. I don't know. I probably stole it from somebody, Brian. So I say that 50% to be successful in anything you do, and we're talking sales now. So to be successful in anything you do, 50% is hard work, 40% is being a person of integrity and standing for something. And the last 10% is a dogfight. And I think that's what we're talking about is the dogfight here. What separates, the top 10 percenters and
Yeah,
I would say like time and territory management, especially now with all the moving parts and the opportunity for distractions. People that embrace coaching and feedback, and they don't necessarily take it in always, but you can see that they've embraced it. They may go, I don't know, but then they make that change. And then the last one, I've always said this, is people with uncommon curiosity. Like, they're the people, like, after the meeting, they're like, hey, can I schedule some time with you to talk more about that? Because I feel like I was bogging everybody down, but I really want to know. Because that, in this world of moving so quickly, the best salespeople know more about their product than the people demonstrating it. And that helps you in those situations where Brian's asked me questions, and somebody who doesn't know their product or their competition, that's a good question. Let me get back to you. And soon as, like, they say that 6 or 7 times, that's a good question. I'll get back to you. And then they have to run to their solution consultant or something like that. And at the velocity of way things move nowadays, people are like, they want to move on, not necessarily buy, but move on to the next decision point or vendor or what have you. So I would say those are the areas that put you in that 10%.
Yeah, because curiosity keeps coming up. And I think it's not an autonomous or an independent skill. I think you have to have confidence before curiosity. Then you have to have empathy before curiosity.
Yeah.
And that's all. Now you got 3 advanced skills that you need kind of in sequence almost, that you typically don't find in young sellers because they're new. There goes the confidence. They're like imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
playing a character instead of being authentic.
Right. That's so true.
And then you have to be empathetic, which is thinking like a someone else when they're still worrying about thinking like a salesperson.
Yeah. You can't just blow right past some things, you
Because
have.
curiosity comes from empathy. What's it like to be on their side? I'm curious about why is that important, as opposed to I'll go figure this out. I'll go get you the answer. Maybe you
Yeah.
don't want the answer. What you really want is why do you care?
Right. It's interesting. It's like, I'm a big quote person, and you made me think of another one. How's this go? You might have to help me about. People don't care about how much you know
Until how much you
until they
care.
know how much you care. Right.
Yeah.
And that's probably what you just said. Like, if you had to grab a quote and sum it up, maybe that's it.
Yeah. And I had a manager who said his success was faking sincerity. And I said, you know how much better you do if you didn't fake it? If you really cared.
And that's probably caught up with them at one point, right?
Well, people see through it after a while.
Like, yeah.
Because he wasn't being malicious. He was just being expeditious. He was trying to get something done faster.
Yeah. Yep. Right.
But then when you get that part done, then all of a sudden the client wants to know that you really care, and you're not around. You got what you wanted. Now, they're on their own.
Yeah. And that will come back to bite you.
Real quick.
Yeah. For sure.
Cool. Hey, this has been a great conversation. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I'm not much of a Twitter guy or anything like that, but definitely find me on LinkedIn. I love helping people out. I actually just met a person the other day, just sent me a text. I got her connected, got her an interview. The enterprise software world is like San Diego. It's like the what do they say, the biggest small city in the world. It's a big world, but a lot of connections. I love getting people connected, and I got her connected. She just got a job. So Hannah, if you're listening, congrats. And yeah, find me on LinkedIn, hit me up, and love to connect and have conversations. And Brian, thanks for what you do. I love it.